Hi, this is Danielle and Jonathan. Oops, I'm making my seat go down. Danielle and Jonathan Kepperling from Kepperling Preservation Services here for our preservation coffee break. If we have any questions, let us know. I think the video function also works, but then the chat works too if you don't want to talk or be on video. I think you can choose not to be on video. I know there are times that I do that. So today we're going to talk about how to navigate the historic review process. So if you live in a historic district, and the historic districts are categorized by, and it's a designation given by the National Park Service through the state Office of Historic Preservation. And there's over 400 in Pennsylvania. And there's historic commissions, there's HARB, which is the Historic Architectural Review Board. There's different historic commissions, there's different types, but they all pretty much have the same process. Some of them have a little bit more regulations about, I know the HARB districts are sometimes a little bit more stringent on what you're allowed to do and not do in on the exterior of your building, such as like light fixtures and paint colors, maybe not paint colors, but I know light fixtures are a big thing. Like picking what kind of outside light. Shutters, yeah, those
like
kind
materials
yeah,
that are used,
yeah.
like sometimes you got marble, granite, stuff like that. They're very picky with certain ones of those.
Yeah. So it just depends on what you have and what you're working on. The good news is though that buildings within historic districts tend to actually have a higher per square footage value than buildings not in historic districts overall across the country. So if you're feeling like you're not getting to exercise all your rights as a property owner, that's kind of the trade-off. And there's been studies done by that over a 40-year period. And actually last week, one of our attendees asked me about where he's a realtor, and he asked me, if there was any research on that, and I sent him over a bunch of information today, so I knew that right off the top of my head. So anyway, so the historic district, they look at everything from the exterior building visible from the street. They call that the streetscape. That's one of those words that you hear a lot. So if it's visible from the street, they're going to care about any changes you want to make to that.
And that means alleys and all that other stuff count as streets.
Yeah. Any public streets. Yeah. They also approve any applications for demolition and any new construction. So if there's an empty lot or a building that has been demolished, or somebody wants to make a radical change to a building. I know a couple months ago in Lancaster, somebody wanted to tear down a building and put like a 14-story building in its place, and those are the things that the historic commissions will review and either approve or deny. So if you're wondering if you need the approval, typically maintenance type things you don't need an approval. If you're changing anything, whether it's windows, the roof, anything that alters the appearance, shutters, those are the things that you'll need to have approval. Now, a lot of the approvals are easy, and that's what I want everybody to take away from this. Most of the approvals are approved at the staff level. So you go in with your plans, and I'll tell you how I usually do it, the down and dirty, easy way. You go in with your plans, and the staff member talks to you a little bit, or you just drop them off. There's a couple different ways depending on which municipality you're dealing with. If they have questions, they'll call you, and it gets approved. You pick it up, and you're ready to get your building permit. If you want to make a radical change, if it's a change that the staff person doesn't agree with, then you go before the whole board. And I think demolitions and new construction go before the board just because they would be, more of it's not just a change to an existing building. So, find out, first thing you want to do is find out if you're in a historic district. You can look on that's something you should know when you buy your house. but you can definitely, look on your municipality's website, see if you're in a historic district. We talked about the types of work that requires the approval: replacements of doors and windows, any changes to the porch, replacement of the roof, anything to do with the masonry. Sometimes that falls into maintenance. I guess it depends on what you want to do to it. I would think painting, definitely painting and masonry wood, because that's not recommended.
Unless it was already painted.
Yeah. Addition of a roof deck, any additions to the property, or then demolition of any part of the building or the whole building. If you want to do something radical, I definitely recommend making a phone call to one of the staff members of the historic commission. Like, there's usually a staff person that's like the historic specialist within the city or the municipality. Reach out to them. Bigger cities like Philadelphia have multiples. They have like 4 or 5 people. But reach out to somebody there, ask your questions, see if they're receptive to your idea before you spend a lot of time and effort in plans, especially if you want to do something radical. Go in with a concept, and that's something else you can do. You can ask for a concept review. You can have schematics made. Go in, say, this is what I want to do. Get feedback from the board, which are usually a lot of volunteers. There's usually a realtor, an architect, a building person, a variety of people that will give you input and ideas. And then you haven't spent a lot of money on the front end design, and then they tell you can't do it. There are options if you really want to do it and you want to push ahead, but we'll get into that a little bit later. There's 2 ways to submit to the historic commission. Now, what I do, my down and dirty way, is I take pictures of the facades and print them out. Then I make notes in magic marker all over them. Replacement of window with a wood window. Replacement of shutters to match existing. Repair of whatever. Repair in kind, like using the words of the Secretary of Interior Standards, because that's what guides their decision making. And if you do that and you're just doing like maintenance and repairs, that's usually enough to get staff approval. You want to submit like any information of any products that you're using, like if you are doing wood replacement windows or shutters, make sure that you specify exactly what you're using. That's how I get the majority of our stuff through the Historic Commission, and it's approved at the staff level. I actually have only had to attend one municipality meeting to have an approval. Usually everything that we do gets approved at that level. Otherwise, you have an architect or and somebody that's historically based, architect or engineer, prepare a set of prints for you to submit if you're doing something a little bit major. Now, some of those can also be approved at the staff level, but when we've had to do that, it's bigger projects like a whole facade that's being reconstructed back to the way it was, or something like that. That just takes, they just want to make sure your engineering's okay, that there's somebody overseeing that the work is going to be structurally sound when it's done. So those are the 2 ways, but either way, majority of that work because even that project got approved at the staff level. But if you do have to go before the Historic Commission, after everything's been reviewed, the historic preservation specialist usually is the person in the municipality that reviews everything, writes down their reason why they either approve or deny the change that you want to make. And they use the Secretary of Interior Standards as their basis. And then that gets submitted to the board. And then the board reviews it beforehand. And then when you have the meeting, everybody's reviewed it, you've all talked, and you have a chance to present, or your architect or contractor does. And then you get feedback from the board. If you don't agree with the board's decision, you can appeal it, and there's appeal processes in all of these boards. In Lancaster City, you appeal to the City Council. I have seen the City Council overturn the Historic Commission's recommendation. So it happens. It just depends on, some of it's politics, really. Some of it's like how much community uproar there was, because at some of these meetings, you know, if enough people have heard about it, especially a building that wants to be demolished or, you know, something like that, people will show up, and then you do get that community, you know, meeting kind of thing. But that's typically what happens after approval, either at the staff level or after the meeting, your building permit gets approved. The other thing that can happen if the whole board denies you is that you can resubmit. You can go back, listen to the feedback that they gave you, alter your plans a little bit, maybe change the materials if you were going to not replace in kind, but then they suggested some products that would work, that would be economical, you know, some of those things that, because that's one of the reasons that people often offer is that it's an unnecessary hardship. So if that's your reasoning for wanting to use a certain material, sometimes they're more familiar with materials that would be good options for you, and then you can resubmit and then get the approval again at the staff level.
The catch between the unnecessary hardship request is the fact that a lot of municipalities now do not allow you to use neglect for demolition.
Yeah, demolition by neglect. So if you just don't do any maintenance to your building, a lot of municipalities are starting to codify that demolition.
You could have fixed it beforehand.
Yeah, demolition by neglect is
bad.
not a reason to grant a demolition permit, which is good from a preservation standpoint. And you do have options. There are options for mitigating the damage that's being done by the weather and the cycles. It takes a lot of neglect to
yeah, but
yeah.
It's just be aware that doing a neglect is not a good reason to demolish anything anymore. So
anyway, I hope that kind of demystified the historic commission review process. It's not as scary or as daunting as some of the people will have you believe. I hear so many stories of the hysterical committee or the, you know, and they call them the hysterical societies, and I'm just like, they're not that bad. As long as you're trying to preserve your building and do what's right, they usually are trying to help you too.
You also usually hear that from the contractors that don't normally do the work because they don't understand the process or even what they're even trying to do.
Yeah, that is true also. So anyway, I hope that helps you. Let us know if there's anything else we can do to help. Our website's practicalpreservationservices.com, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Thank you.